These Small Hours with Russell Cordell Staker. Hello, my friends. This is Russell Cordell Staker, and you are listening to the Small Hours podcast. I'm always glad to have you with me, and I hope today will be a fulfilling few moments of time in what I'm going to offer today. I am going to read the third portion as I've segmented out Walt Whitman's original 1855 Leaves of Grass here in just a moment. And then I have some concluding thoughts on the flip side of this, on the other end of it, after I do read that. We are getting quickly to the end of this endeavor to read Leaves of Grass. And today I was thinking, before I get started, there was a concept that you've probably heard. I certainly have throughout my life, and I've used this at different times. But the phrase, or I guess the idiom, would be casting your bread upon the waters. And I was thinking a little bit about that before I got ready to read and what I'm going to produce here today with Whitman, because as I've been considering where I've been over the last couple of years in the development of this podcast, which has just been, if you've been listening, it's been very ad hoc, it's been small, and sometimes it's kind of disparate in its timing. I do have an endeavor to try to expand upon this, and I think over the course of where I would like to take this podcast, there's going to be a lot of avenues for me to express. But in many ways, this has been an endeavor much like casting bread upon the water. And what that phrase typically means is to do something good or to take a risk, usually without expecting very much in return, by offering something of yourself. And much like, if you really think about it, if you've ever, of course, you've had a piece of bread in your hands. I'm going to think like a French baguette, but you kind of tear that bread off and you throw a chunk of that bread out into the water. When I lived in Belgium a long, long time ago, I remember I used to go to this particular park in this little city called Sint-Niklaas, which is a little bit south of Antwerpen, and not too far from the capital city. But there was a beautiful little park that I used to go into and just kind of spend some time just walking around. There was a little meandering path that went around these beautiful trees, and there was an inky black, almost like pond, but I used to call it a lake, even though it wasn't a lake. And these ducks and geese would come in, the geese in the fall, but particularly in the summertime, there would be ducks on the water, and there were some swans. And I used to take French bread or Belgian bread. I'd go to the local bakkerij, as they called it, and I would take a chunk of bread and I would go and feed these birds. And I remember the impression as I would tear the bread. I like the smell. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm remembering, and I was in my early 20s when I was doing this, and I would go on a regular basis and I would throw little chunks of bread out onto the water. And what I always was amazed by was I would put the bread sometimes in a place where none of the birds would be aware of it. But it was as if that little snap on the water, a little slap, when I put the bread down, it caused a ripple. And it was almost like the sound itself carried enough that the birds from all corners, I shouldn't say corners because it was a round lake, or the pond, would just instantly be aware of the fact that, hey, there's bread on the water. And I was casting something of my own out into that water, hoping that they would actually recognize it and see the value in it, and certainly the sustenance. And they always did. I mean, birds have a way of doing that. And I'm probably drawing a really poor metaphor here, but it got me thinking about what I've been doing with this podcast. And even in this current gesture of reading Walt Whitman, which I've hesitated to want to do, and I've been thinking about it, and I'm doing it now, and we're almost through this thing of reading his Leaves of Grass. But it serves a purpose because of the power of the language. And it's not that these are my words, but they've become words of my own. And I'm hoping that in my reading of Walt Whitman, that there is a quality within the word that if you choose on your own, and I certainly hope that you would, to read Leaves of Grass and make it a part of your library at home, that what I'm adding to it with just the quality of my own voice gives it a range and a depth of the experience that I have. I just recently turned 48, and I'm not some great wise individual, but as the years are starting to add up, I'm hoping that the experience and the depth and the perspective, the experience of how I see things and what has influenced me in my life has added something to the magic and the power and the resonance of the words. And so in a way it is on a podcast, going out into the air, not really certain of who actually is listening, although I know I've got listeners and they've been consistent, and I'm grateful for whoever you are, that there is something positive that's coming out. And if it enables you to feel better about yourself, or at least invigorates you to say, hey, the power of literary language, the idea of storytelling, the idea of poetry, the expression in my own heart, the speed and the cadence and the temper and the tenor and the tangibility of language inspires me as an individual to give something of myself and cast my bread out onto the water of life, then hopefully it's an infinite giving that we, in our own space and time, whether we're podcasting or just having a conversation with ourselves, could be in the car or certainly in the environments that we work in, around the kids that we're raising, around the partners that we're romantically inclined with, our spouses, individuals that we meet in random places at the grocery store, or in, just common denominator places as we are exchanging our own form of humanity in how we express ourselves. And it isn't often not just words, it's also in how we carry our thinking, how we carry our bodies, how we carry maybe just the expressions that we offer in our faces. All of that is part of an emotional range of an intelligent way of communicating something that's broader than just our own singular way of viewing the world. And I know I'm probably not saying this the way I would like to, and I'm going to listen back at this and say, man, I missed what I'm trying to say. But with this podcast, I really I let it be. And I'm hoping that, again, to pull in this bread on the water, that these little scraps of bread that I'm throwing out onto the water for you or for whoever is listening, that it's something that is of sustenance and that it's meaningful, and that I'm offering some form of assistance to help you further ground your own self-identity in the pursuit of the kind of life that is more meaningful, as opposed to the one that we just kind of do in a transactional mode of A plus B equals C. And so that's the intent behind this. And one other thing I want to say about this, and this is a bit personal, and I don't care really whether or not this fully makes a lot of sense or not, but I'm going to just go ahead and say it because it's been on my mind. I've been re-engaging again in considering getting back out into the corporate side of the world. I have a long history of being a sales professional, and I stepped away from that several years ago to focus on being a full-time dad. My wife's had a very good career, and we had to adjust with certain needs within our family, and it's been a wonderful time for me to do what I've been doing. But just the economics of life too, this is a time where, I'm trying to inject myself back into a game that I left behind, and I'm older now, and the world doesn't necessarily really want maybe what I've got, even though I've got this huge amount of experience and depth. And so it's hard sometimes when you put yourself back out into an environment that maybe doesn't on the surface want you back in that, because you don't fit the box or the criteria of a different kind of version of yourself when you were younger and maybe just coming out of a school program or whatever. And now I'm probably saying more than I need to. The point I'm trying to make here is that I've become a fuller version of myself because I've allowed myself to be exactly me. And I have to accept the fact that by being completely openly me in the expression of what interests me and why it is I'm doing what I'm doing, I also have to accept the risk that comes with that. So much like putting bread on the water, it may not be accepted either. And sometimes there are individuals that may say, why are you doing that? Or are you really seriously thinking that you can fit back into the world after having taken such a broad detour doing something that most people probably wouldn't consider doing? And so I'm going through a process right now where I know who I am. I know what's of value to me. I certainly believe very strongly in the power of my own sense for literature and language and story and narrative. But it's hard to take all of that skill set and apply it in this corporate economic world that sometimes only has a binary view of things, even though I think a lot of organizations love to talk like they do. And now I'm getting too deep, but what I wanted to close before I start with Leaves of Grass is that what I'm about to read today in this portion 3 is an answer to my own self-reflection. And I think it would be, regardless of where you're at in your life, I want you to listen for the little breadcrumbs on the water that Walt Whitman puts out when he's talking about this motion of life. And when we get through the end of this portion of reading today, on the flip side, there are 3 little pieces of bread that I picked out that stood out for me that I'm going to identify. And as I told you earlier, when we get all the way through the end of the reading of this 1855 Leaves of Grass from Whitman, I have a conclusion episode that's coming where I'm going to pull together the various little bread crumbs that have been tossed out all along the way. We've already done 2 of these, and I did my trailer. There are some things in there that I very subtly brought out, and I will pull those out much more directly on the tail end of this so that we can draw all this together. And I think it's going to be really fulfilling. I'm excited to get to the conclusion of this, and that's why I've been breaking up in partitions or portions the various readings of Whitman here, because there's so much to offer. And so to tie together what I've probably very loosely been pulling for me and hopefully for you, this is an expression of life in real time. And it's as broad and as vast as the Milky Way and the stars and beyond. And it's just as chaotic and messy. And as I was trying to probably inadequately express, there are moments in our lives where we do things that we're not sure of the real positive impact. Maybe it's a negative impact. We're not sure of the impact in general of what it is that our life is presenting. But when we believe enough in what we're doing, and it's something that we think is good and of value, not only for ourselves, but the world around us, it's worth the effort and the risk to try that, even if it means it puts you in a place where you're kind of out in the unknown. And I certainly speak from experience on this because I've been in the unknown for a while now, and I'm also still trying to carve out my path in this life, not only to be the full version of Russell Cordell Staker, but to also check every box that I believe I need to check to fulfill all of the obligations that I have and the wishes that I have, not only for myself, but more importantly for my family and my friends and the people that I'm reaching out to with the things that I'm doing. And this is an ongoing effort. There is no perfect or absolute final answer. I think this is a discovery process in and of itself. And that is the lead in that I'm going to give right now as we now seg into portion 3 of the reading of Whitman's Leaves of Grass 1855 edition. So listen carefully to the words to follow, because he leaves some very specific breadcrumbs that at least helped me in this particular moment, and they will help you as well. I'll talk to you on the flip side of this reading. Oh, Christ, my fit is mastering me, what the rebel said, gaily adjusting his throat to the rope noose. What the savage at the stump, his eye sockets empty, his mouth spiriting whoops in defiance. What stills the traveler come to the vault at Mount Vernon? What sobers the Brooklyn boy as he looks down the shores of the Wallabout and remembers the prison ships? What burnt the gums of the redcoat at Saratoga, where he surrendered his brigades? These become mine, and me every one, and they are but little. I become as much more as I like. I become any presence or truth of humanity here. I see myself in prison, shaped like another man, and feel the dull, unintermitted pain. For me, the keepers of convicts shoulder their carbines and keep watch. It is I let out in the morning and barred at night. Not a mutineer walks handcuffed to the jail, but I am handcuffed to him and walk by his side. I am less the jolly one there and more the silent one with sweat on my twitching lips. Not a youngster is taken for larceny, but I go up to and am tried and sentenced. Not a cholera patient lies at the last gasp, but I also lie at the last gasp. My face is ash-colored, my sinews gnarl. Away from me, people retreat. Askers embody themselves in me, and I am embodied in them. I project my hat and sit shamefaced and beg. I rise ecstatic through all and sweep with true gravitation. The whirling and whirling is elemental within me. Somehow I have been stunned. Stand back. Give me a little time beyond my cuffed head and slumbers and dreams and gaping. I discover myself on a verge of the unusual, or of the usual mistake. That I could forget the mockers and insults. That I could forget the trickling tears and the blows of the bludgeons and hammers. That I could look with a separate look on my own crucifixion and bloody crowning. I remember. I resume the overstayed fraction. The grave of rock multiplies what is being confided to it, or to any graves. The corpses rise, the gashes heal, the fastenings roll away. I troop forth replenished with supreme power, one of an average, unending procession. We walk the roads of Ohio and Massachusetts and Virginia and Wisconsin and New York and New Orleans and Texas and Montreal and San Francisco and Charleston and Savannah and Mexico. Inland and by the sea coast and boundary lines, and we pass the boundary lines. Our swift ordinances are on their way over the whole earth. The blossoms we wear in our hats are the growth of 2,000 Eliphas. I salute you. I see the approach of your numberless gangs. I see you understand yourselves and me. I know that they who have eyes are divine, and blind and lame are equally divine, and that my steps drag behind yours, yet go before them, and are aware how I am with you no more than I am with everybody. The friendly and flowing savage, who is he? Is he waiting for civilization or past it and mastering it? Is he some Southwesterner raised outdoors? Is he Canadian? Is he from the Mississippi country, or from Iowa, Oregon, or California, or from the mountains, or prairie life, or bush life, or from the sea? Wherever he goes, men and women accept and desire him. They desire he should like them and touch them and speak to them and stay with them. Behavior lawless as snowflakes, words simple as grass, uncombed head and laughter and naivete. Slow-stepping feet and the common features and the common modes and emanations. They descend in new forms from the tips of his fingers. They are wafted with the odor of his body or breath. They fly out of the glance of his eyes. Flaunt of the sunshine, I need not your bask. Lie over, you light surfaces only. I force the surfaces and the depths also. Earth, you seem to look for something at my hands. Say, old topknot, what do you want? Man or woman? I might tell how I like you, but cannot. And might tell what it is in me and what it is in you, but cannot. And might tell the pinings I have, the pulse of my nights and days. Behold, I do not give lectures or little charity. What I give out of myself. You there, impotent, loose in the knees, open your scarf chops till I blow grit within you. Spread your palms and lift the flaps of your pockets. I am not to be denied. I compel. I have stores plenty to spare. And anything I have, I bestow. I do not ask who you are. That is not important to me. You can do nothing and be nothing, but what I will enfold you. To a dredge of the cotton fields or emptier of privies I lean, on his right cheek I put the family kiss, and in my soul I swear I never will deny him. On women fit for conception I start bigger and nimbler babes. This day I am jetting the stuff of far more arrogant republics. To anyone dying, thither I speed and twist the knob of the door, turn the bedclothes toward the foot of the bed. Let the physician and the priest go home. I seize the descending man. I raise him with resistless will. O despairer, here is my neck. By God, you shall not go down. Hang your whole weight upon me. I dilate you with tremendous breath. I buoy you up. Every room of the house I do fill with an armed force. Lovers of me, bafflers of graves, sleep. I and they keep guard all night. No doubt, not to cease, shall dare to lay finger upon you. I have embraced you, and henceforth possess you to myself. And when you rise in the morning, you will find what I tell you is so. I am he bringing help for the sick as they pant on their backs, and for strong, upright men I bring yet more needed help. I heard what was said of the universe, heard it, and heard of several thousand years. It is middling well as far as it goes. But is that all? Magnifying and applying come I, outbidding at the start. the old cautious hucksters, the most they offer for mankind in eternity, less than a spirit of my own seminal wet. Taking myself the exact dimensions of Jehovah and laying them away, lithographing Kronos and Zeus and his son, and Hercules his grandson, buying drafts of Osiris and Isis and Belus and Brahma and Adonai. In my portfolio, placing Manitou loose and Allah on a leaf and the crucifix engraved, with Odin and the hideous-faced Mexilitli, and the idols and images, honestly taking them all for what they are worth and not a cent more. Admitting they were alive and did the work of their day. Admitting they bore mites as for unfledged birds who have now to rise and fly and sing for themselves. Accepting the rough deific sketches to fill out better in myself, bestowing them freely on each man and woman I see, discovering as much or more in framing a house. Putting higher claims for him there with his rolled up sleeves, driving the mallet and chisel. Not objecting to special revelations, considering a curl of smoke or a hair on the back of my hand as curious as any revelation. Those a hold of fire engines and hook and ladder ropes more to me than the gods of the antique wars, minding their voices peal through the crash of destruction. Their brawny limbs passing safe over charred lathes, their white foreheads whole and unhurt out of the flames. By the mechanic's wife, with her babe at her nipple, interceding for every person born, 3 scythes at harvest whizzing in a row from 3 lusty angels with shirts bagged out at their waists. The snag-toothed hostler, with red hair redeeming sins past and to come, selling all he possesses, and traveling on foot to fee lawyers for his brother, and sit by him while he is tried for forgery. What was strewn in the amplest strewing, the square rod about me, and not filling the square rod then. The bull and the bug never worshipped half enough. Dung and dirt more admirable than was dreamed. The supernatural of no account, myself waiting my time to be one of the supremes. The day getting ready for me when I shall do as much good as best and be as prodigious. Guessing when I am, it will not tickle me much to receive puffs out of pulpit or print. By my life lumps, becoming already a creator, putting myself here and now to the ambushed womb of the shadows, a call in the midst of the crowd, my own voice, orotund, sweeping, and final. Come, my children. Come, my boys and girls, and my women, and household and intimates. Now the performer launches his nerve. He has passed his prelude on the reeds within. Easily written, loose-fingered chords, I feel the thrum of their climax and close. My head evolves on my neck. Music rolls, but not from the organ. Folks are around me, but they are no household of mine. Ever the hard and unsunk ground, ever the eaters and drinkers, ever the upward and downward sun, ever the air and the ceaseless tides, ever myself and my neighbors refreshing and wicked and real. Ever the old inexplicable query, ever that thorned thumb, that breath of itches and thirsts. Ever the vexer's hoot hoot, till we find where the sly one hides and bring him forth. Ever love, ever the sobbing liquid of life, ever the bandage under the chin, ever the trestles of death. Here and there with dimes on the eyes walking, to feed the greed of the belly, the brains, liberally spooning. Tickets buying or taking or selling, but into the feast never once going. Many sweating and plowing and thrashing, and then the chaff for the payment receiving. A few idly owning, and they the wheat continually claiming. This is the city, and I am one of the citizens. Whatever interests the rest interests me. Politics, churches, newspapers, schools, benevolent societies, improvements, banks, tariffs, steam shifts, factories, markets, stocks and stores and real estate and personal estate. They who piddle and patter here in collars and tailored coats, or tailed coats, I am aware who they are. And that they are not worms or fleas, I acknowledge the duplicates of myself under all the scrape-lipped and pipe-legged concealments. The weakest and shallowest is deathless with me. What I do and say, the same waits for them. Every thought that flounders in me, the same flounders in them. I know perfectly well my own egotism and know my omnivorous words and cannot say any less and would fetch you, whoever you are, flush with myself. My words are words of a questioning and to indicate reality. this printed and bound book, but the printer and the printing office boy, the marriage estate and settlement, but the body of the mind of the bridegroom, also those of the bride, the panorama of the sea, but the sea itself, the well-taken photographs, but your wife or friend close and solid in your arms, the fleet of ships of the line, and all the modern improvements, but the craft and pluck of the admiral, the dishes and fare and furniture, but the host and hostess and the look out of their eyes, the sky up there, yet here or next door or across the way, the saints and sages in history, but you yourself, sermons and creeds and theology, but the human brain, and what is called reason, and what is called love, and what is called life. I do not despise you, priests. My faith is the greatest of faiths and the least of faiths. In closing, all worship ancient and modern, and all between ancient and modern, believing I shall come again upon the earth after 5,000 years, waiting responses from oracles, honoring the gods, saluting the sun, making a fetish of the first rock or stump, powwowing with sticks in the circle of obis, helping the lama or Brahmin as he trims the lambs of the idols, dancing or lamps of the idols, dancing yet through the streets in a phallic procession, wrapped and austere in the woods and gymno-sophist, drinking mead from the skull cap to Shasta and Veda's admirant, minding the Quran, walking the Teocallis, spotted with the gore from the stone and knife, beating the serpent skin drum. Accepting the Gospels, accepting him that was crucified, knowing assuredly that he is divine, to the mass kneeling, to the Puritan's prayer rising, sitting patiently in a pew, ranting and frothing in my insane crisis, waiting dead-like till my spirit arouses me, looking forth on pavement and land and outside of pavement and land, belonging to the winders of the circuits, one of the centripetal and centrifugal gang. I turn and talk like a man leaving charges before a journey. Downhearted doubters, dull and excluded, frivolous, sullen, moping, angry, affected, disheartened, atheistical. I know every one of you and know the unspoken interrogatories. By experience, I know them. How the flukes splash, how they contort rapid as lightning with spasms and spouts of blood. Be at peace, bloody flukes of doubters and sullen mopers. I take my place among you as much as among any. The past is the push of you and me, and all precisely the same, and the day and night are for you and me and all. And what is yet untried and afterward is for you and me and all. I do not know what is untried and afterward, but I know it is sure and alive and sufficient. Each who passes is considered, and each who stops is considered, and not a single one can it fail. It cannot fail the young man who died and was buried, nor the young woman who died and was put by his side, nor the little child that peeped in at the door and then drew back and was never seen again, nor the old man who has lived without purpose and feels it with bitterness worse than gall, nor him in the poorhouse tubercled by rum and the bad disorder, nor the numberless slaughtered and wrecked, nor the brutish kobu called the ordure of humanity, nor the sacks merely floating with open mouths for food to slip in, nor anything in the earth or down in the oldest graves of the earth, nor anything in the myriads of spheres, nor one of the myriads of myriads that inhabit them, nor the present, nor the least wisp that is known. It is time to explain myself. Let us stand up. What is known I strip away. I launch all men and women forward with me into the unknown. The clock indicates the moment. But what does eternity indicate? Eternity lies in bottomless reservoirs. Its buckets are rising forever and ever. They pour and they pour and they exhale away. We have thus far exhausted trillions of winters and summers. There are trillions ahead and trillions ahead of them. Births have brought us richness and variety. Births have brought us richness and variety. And other births will bring us richness and variety. I do not call one greater and one smaller. That which fills its period and place is equal to any. Were mankind murderous or jealous upon you, my brother or my sister? I am sorry for you. They are not murderous or jealous upon me. All has been gentle with me. I keep no account with lamentation. What have I to do with lamentation? I am an acme of things accomplished, and I am an encloser of things to be. My feet strike an apex of the apices of the stairs. On every step, bunches of ages and larger bunches between the steps, all below duly traveled, and still I mount and mount. Rise after rise bow the phantoms behind me. Far down I see the huge first nothing, the vapor from the nostrils of death. I know I was even there. I waited unseen and always and slept while God carried me through the lethargic mist and took my time, and took no hurt from the fetid carbon. Long I was hugged close, long and long. Immense have been the preparations for me, faithful and friendly the arms that have helped me. Cycles ferried my cradle, rowing and rowing like cheerful boatmen. For room to me, stars kept aside in their own rings. They sent influencers to look after what was to hold me. Before I was born, out of my mother, generations guided me. My embryo has never been torpid. Nothing could overlay it. Nor it the nebula cohered to an orb, the long, slow strata piled to rest it on. Vast vegetables gave it sustenance. Monstrous sauroids transported it in their mouths and deposited it with care. All forces have been steadily employed to complete and delight me. Now I stand on this spot with my soul. Span of youth, ever pushed elasticity, manhood balanced and florid and full. My lovers suffocate me, crowding my lips and thick in the pores of my skin, jostling me through the streets and public halls, coming naked to me at night, crying by day, ahoy from the rocks of the river, swinging and chirping over my head, calling my name from flower beds or vines or tangled underbush, or while I swim in the bath, or drink from the pump at the corner, or the curtain is down at the opera, or I glimpse at a woman's face in the railroad car, lighting on every moment of my life, bussing my body with soft and balsamic busses, noiselessly passing handfuls out of their hearts and giving them to be mine. Old age, superbly rising, ineffable grace of dying days. Every condition promulges not only itself, it promulges what grows after and out of itself. And the dark hush promulges as much as any. I open my scuttle at night and see the far sprinkled systems, and all I see multiplied as high as I can cipher edge, but the rim of the farther systems. Wider and wider they spread, expanding and always expanding outward and forever outward. My sun has his sun, and round him obediently wheels. He joins with his partners a group of superior circuit, and greater sets follow, making specks of the greatest inside them. There is no stoppage and never can be stoppage. If I and you and the worlds and all beneath or upon their surfaces and all the palpable life were this moment reduced back to a pallid float, it would not avail in the long run. We should surely bring up again where we now stand, and as surely go as much farther than farther and farther. A few quadrillions of eras, a few octillions of cubic leagues do not hazard the span or make it impatient. They are but parts. Anything is but a part. See ever so. There is limitless space outside of that. Count ever so much. There is limitless time around that. Our rendezvous is fitly appointed, and God will be there and wait till we come. I know I have the best of time and space, and that I was never measured and never will be measured. I tramp a perpetual journey. My signs are a rainproof coat and good shoes and a staff cut from the woods. No friend of mine takes his ease in my chair. I have no chair, nor church, nor philosophy. I lead no man to a dinner table or library or exchange, but each man and each woman of you I lead upon a knoll. My left hand hooks you round the waist. My right hand points to landscapes of continents and a plain public road. Not I, not anyone else can travel that road for you. You must travel it for yourself. It is not far. It is within reach. Perhaps you have been on it since you were born and did not know. Perhaps it is everywhere on water and on land. Shoulder your duds, and I will mine, and let us hasten forth. Wonderful cities and free nations we shall fetch as we go. If you tire, give me both burdens, and rest the chuff of your hand on my hip. And in the due time you shall repay the same service to me. For after we start, we never lie by again. This day before dawn I ascended a hill and looked at the crowded heaven, and I said to my spirit, when we became the enfolders of those orbs and the pleasure and knowledge of everything in them, shall we be filled and satisfied then? And my spirit said, no, we level that lift to pass and continue beyond. You are also asking me questions, and I hear you. I answer that I cannot answer. You must find out for yourself. Sit a while, wayfarer. Here are biscuits to eat, and here is milk to drink. But as soon as you sleep and renew yourself in sweet clothes, I will certainly kiss you with my goodbye kiss and open that gate for your egress hence. Long enough have you dreamed contemptible dreams. Now I wash the gum from your eyes. You must habit yourself to the dazzle of the light and of every moment of your life. Long have you timidly waited, holding a plank by the shore. Now I will you to be a bold swimmer, to jump off in the midst of the sea and rise again and nod to me and shout and laughingly dash with your hair. I am the teacher of athletes. He that by me spreads a wider breast than my own proves the width of my own. He most honors my style who learns under it to destroy the teacher. The boy I love, the same becomes a man not through a derived power, but in his own right, wicked rather than virtuous, out of conformity or fear, found of his sweetheart relishing well his stake. Unrequited love or a slight cutting him worse than a wound cuts. First rate to ride, to fight, to hit the bullseye, to sail a skiff, to sing a song or play on the banjo, preferring scars and faces pitted with smallpox over all latherers and those that keep out of the sun. I teach straying from me, yet who can stray from me? I follow you whoever you are from the present hour. My words itch at your ears till I understand them. I do not say these things for $1 or to fill up the time while I wait for a boat. It is you just as much as myself. I act as the tongue of you. It was tied in your mouth. In mine, it begins to be loosened. I swear I will never mention love or death inside a house. And I swear I never will translate myself at all, only to him or her who privately stays with me in the open air. If you would understand me, go to the heights or water shore. The nearest gnat is an explanation, and a drop or the motion of waves a key. The maul, the oar, and the handsaw second my words. No shuttered room or school can commune with me, but roughs and little children better than they. The young mechanic is closest to me. He knows me pretty well. The woodman that takes his axe and jug with him shall take me with him all day. The farm boy plowing in the field feels good at the sound of my voice. In vessels that sail, my words must sail. I go with fishermen and seamen and love them. My face rubs to the hunter's face when he lies down alone in his blanket. The driver, thinking of me, does not mind the jolt of his wagon. The young mother and the old mother shall comprehend me. The girl and the wife rest the needle a moment and forget where they are. They and all would resume what I have told them. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. And whoever walks a furlong without sympathy walks to his own funeral, dressed in his shroud. And I or you, pocketless of a dime, may purchase the pick of the earth. And to glance with an eye or show a bean in its pod confounds the learning of all times. And there is no trade or employment, but the young man following it may become a hero. And there is no object so soft, but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. And any man or woman shall stand cool and supercilious before 1,000,000 universes. And I call to mankind, be not curious about God. For I, who am curious about each, am not curious about God. No array of terms can say how much I am at peace about God and about death. I hear and behold God in every object, yet I understand God not in the least, nor do I understand who there can be more wonderful than myself. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God each hour of the 24, and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know the others will punctually come forever and ever. And as to you, death, and you bitter hug of mortality, it is idle to try to alarm me. To his work without flinching, the accoucheur comes. I see the elder hand pressing, receiving, supporting. I recline by the sills of the exquisite flexible doors and mark the outlet and mark the relief and escape. And as to you, corpse, I think you are good manure, but that does not offend me. I smell the white roses sweet-scented and growing. I reach to the leafy lips. I reach to the polished breasts of melons. And as to you, life, I reckon you are the leavings of many deaths. No doubt I have died myself 10,000 times before. I hear you whispering there, O stars of heaven, O suns, O grass of graves, O perpetual transfers and promotions. If you do not say anything, how can I say anything? Of the turbid pool that lies in the autumn forest, of the moon that descends the steeps of the sowing twilight. Toss sparkles of day and dusk, toss on the black stems that decay in the muck, toss to the moaning gibberish of the dry limbs. I ascend from the moon, I ascend from the night, and perceive of the ghastly glitter, the sunbeams reflected, and debouch to the steady and central from the offspring great or small. There is that in me. I do not know what it is, but I know it is in me. Wrenched and sweaty, calm and cool than my body becomes, I sleep long. I do not know it. It is without name. It is a word unsaid. It is not in any dictionary or utterance or symbol. Something it swings on more than the earth I swing on. To it the creation is the friend whose embracing awakes me. Perhaps I might tell more. Outlines. I plead for my brothers and sisters. Do you see, O my brothers and sisters? It is not chaos or death. It is form and union and plan. It is eternal life. It is happiness. The past and present wilt. I have filled them and emptied them and proceed to fill my next fold of the future. Listener up there, here you. What have you to confide to me? Look in my face while I snuff the sidle of evening. Talk honestly, for no one else hears you, and I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well then. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. I concentrate toward them that are nigh. I wait on the door slab. Who has done his day's work will soonest be through with his supper. Who wishes to walk with me? Will you speak before I am gone? Will you prove already too late? The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab and my loitering. I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world. The last scud of the day holds back from me. It flings my likeness after the rest, and true as any on the shadowed wilds, it coaxes me to the vapor and the dusk. I despair as air. I shake my white locks in the runaway sun. I effuse my flesh in eddies and drift it in lacy jags. I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you nevertheless, and filter and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere, waiting for you. And this is where I will conclude portion 3 of the reading of Whitman's 1855 Leaves of Grass. There is so much richness in this particular portion of the reading, and it isn't to say that it's the best part of what we've read so far. It just keeps getting better, and it's good because you have to read what we've gone through in the first 2 previous portions. But in this particular reading that I just did today, Whitman is really in stride with where he's going. And as I'd mentioned at the beginning of this, before I started, I talked about tossing breadcrumbs on the water. He puts a few really, really big chunks of delicious, sustainable bread on the inky black water of our lives in what he's expressing here. And I want to point out just a couple. And again, all of this, and I want to say this very clearly, when you read something for yourself, the truth that's in the reading, it's there, it's for all of us. And what we see and what we understand doesn't have to be given permission to be what it is because we think it's that way. It's just what it is. But we each bring our own interpretation and our own sense of life and self to the reading. And as I read this particular portion again, and in preparing to produce it as I've just done for you here on this podcast, there were 3 distinct pieces of bread that I seem to pick out here. And again, I'm gonna be a little more direct and telegraphic in pulling these out here. I didn't do this so much in the first two portions. I'm not going to suggest that in the ensuing readings before we complete reading this together that I will be as direct until I get to the very end. But in this particular setting, I think it's appropriate because there are some things here that are going to start to come into full fruition, like a piece of fruit that's coming alive and is resplendent with flavor and texture that allows for a great message here. And the first, each of these is tied to a particular film for me. I really love cinema. I love books. I love music. And I'm always drawing on multiple forms of media in my own previous experience of life and how it informs the present moment and where I'm looking forward. And as I read this portion of Whitman, I thought about Redford's adaptation of Norman Maclean's A River Runs Through It, which I've talked about in a previous podcast, I believe. The book A River Runs Through It and Other Stories by Norman Maclean is one of my most favorite books, and a very personal a piece of literature that for me it's scripture-like because of how important and insightful and spiritual it is to me. And what Robert Redford did with the film, it just added so much depth and range. And I couldn't help but hear echoes of Norman Maclean and Redford's vision for Norman Maclean in his film. And I'm just paraphrasing, but talking about the words under the rocks from the basement of time, that Maclean was haunted by waters. The second is a direct correlation or a direct linkage to the film, the 1989 film Dead Poets Society, starring Ethan Hawke and Robin Williams, in which they talk about Whitman. And there's that famous scene in the classroom where Mr. Keating, played by Robin Williams, is teaching Will. I think that was Ethan Hawke's character's name, Will, if I remember. I'm just going off the top of my head. Also such a powerful movie, and one that really informed me very early in my life. I think I was a sophomore in high school when that one came out. But as Mr. Keating has Will come to the front of the room and he wants him to recite a poem of his own, and Ethan Hawke's character is afraid to do that. And above the chalkboard in the classroom is a photograph or a picture. It's a photograph of Walt Whitman. And Ethan Hawke, I think it was Will, and if I'm saying the name wrong for his character, I apologize. I should have checked this before, but he looks at Mr. Keating, Robin Williams, and he just doesn't want to say anything. And he finally admits that to him, Walt Whitman is the sweaty-toothed madman. And what I really like about that particular sequence is that Mr. Keating, Robin Williams, teaches a very powerful lesson in using Whitman, in which he tells his students, those boys in that room, that we are alive now. We are the stuff of life, of the stars, but we're only going to be here for a moment. You know, that seize the day concept. But what he really incites and inspires in these boys is that our moment is now, and that we too have the ability to contribute a verse. And I'm paraphrasing again here, that our lives, your life, my life, the lives that are yet to be lived, that when that moment is now, and this is what Whitman is talking about very, very directly to each of us when we read this portion of his original 1855 Leaves of Grass, that we're the stuff of forever, and we're here now that we too may contribute a verse. The choice is for us to participate in that or to be numb to it. There really is no other option. And in this sense, and I'm a big believer in the non-binary because I don't think life is black or white or yes or no. There's a lot of gray in this. But in this sense, I think this is a very binary portion of what Whitman is getting at. Either we participate or in contributing that verse in how we choose to live our life and be aware of the life that we're living and what's around us, or we numb ourselves to it, which goes back to what I talked about in the previous podcast, where I would even suggest that it's giving into that nihilistic, no hope possibility or reality that is all too easy to do in moments of darkness, or maybe just apathetic surrender, that maybe this just isn't worth the effort. And Whitman's encouraging us to wake up, to wipe the gum from our eyes, and to step forward into the journey of our lives and to contribute that verse. The third that I think of, piece of bread on the water, that came alive for me as of another very, very important movie to me, the 1970 musical edition of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and this was titled Scrooge, and it stars Sir Alec Guinness and Albert Finney, among a great many others. Kenneth More is another. And the woman that plays, and I do not remember her name, but the woman that plays the ghost of Christmas Present, when she takes Scrooge back in time to see his own childhood, and they're standing outside in the snow looking at a carriage of children dressed in costume, probably around the time of Halloween or that thereabouts, and they're riding this carriage to the schoolhouse, and they're singing a song, and they're just young, they're so full of life, and they're wearing a costume. And Scrooge calls out to the children in this carriage that he recognizes and remembers. And I have to pause because I get emotional. Excuse me. He calls out because he wants to engage with these children that were so important to him earlier in his life. And yet he can't, because he's in a moment that's long since passed, and he's looking back. And the ghost of Christmas Present, this very elegant, beautiful woman, older woman, stately woman in this red, elegant dress, Scrooge says to her, he says, why is it they don't respond to me? And I'm paraphrasing here. And she says, they cannot. These are but shadows of the things that have been. And when I read Whitman in this particular portion, I thought that's exactly something that's coming very, very strongly now, because Whitman is talking about the present. And Whitman's been dead for a long time, but he's alive in these words, just as I'm alive right now, just as you're alive. And he's telling us to engage in those moments, because the moments that we're engaged in now, where we are contributing a verse, like the words under the rock that Norman MacLean talks about, all of that is happening now, but they will soon become mere shadows of the things that have been. And so our objective, our hope, is to engage as fully and as brilliantly as we can, so as we put our own bread on the water, the resonance and the sustenance and the sustainability of this moment not only engages us here, but it fosters a meaning and a depth that we're going to carry with us through the echoes of time. And though the shadows of things that have been will be shadows, they will still be alive in us, and they will be alive for those that come after. And again, this is me adding my own 2 cents here. I'm not saying this is what Whitman says. This is what came to life for me in the reading of what Whitman was telling me very directly. And that's what I wanted to share right there. So I appreciate you listening. This is the conclusion of portion 3 of the reading of Walt Whitman's original 1855 Leaves of Grass. Portion 4 will be coming shortly. Please take good care of yourselves. It's a real honor to be here with you, and I enjoy continuing to do this podcast and look forward to what's about to unfold. So stay tuned. There's more to come with Whitman, and so much more to come with Russell Cordell Staker. This is the Small Hours Podcast. Have a pleasant good afternoon. Thank you for being with me here in these small hours.